Monday, May 20. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. The government is moving to reduce the wait time for approval to be granted for the delivery of electricity to a person's house or building. This is expected to be slashed from 95 to 18 days with the introduction of the new government electrical regulator, the GER. Speaking at a JIS think tank session recently, Minister of Energy Favour Williams said the change will help to increase Jamaica's ranking globally in the Doing Business report. The new regulations governing the GER will also now allow certified electricians the opportunity to become electrical inspectors. The GER will have a database of private electrical inspectors from which persons may choose. It will also be staffed with government auditors who will conduct spot audits sporadically. The management of the Jamaica Urban Transit Company met on the weekend to finalize strategies to deal with recent fires on its buses. JUTC Managing Director Paul Abrams says modifications have been made to the company's maintenance procedures and fire monitoring systems. The JUTC has been shaken up by fires on 3 of its buses just days apart, the last one being on Thursday evening. In response, the company has set up special fire teams, and following an emergency meeting last week, there were changes to the maintenance procedures. He explained that the special fire teams will be part of a modified maintenance program for at least the short term. Chairman of the Economic Growth Council, the EGC, Michael Lee Chin, wants Jamaicans to save and purchase more assets, warning that foreigners will sweep in as the economy begins to strengthen. Lee Chin, who was addressing the EGC's quarterly media press briefing recently at Jamaica House in St. Andrew, lamented that citizens consume a lot and do not save as much. He called for Jamaicans to delay gratification and curb consumption to enable more savings. Asia, Lee Chin said, has had a long-term period of sustainable growth for decades because citizens save. He said the saving rate on the continent is as high as 40% of disposable income.
We in Jamaica, we need to develop a culture of saving. We don't save. We dissave. We consume. Asia has had a period of long-term sustainable growth boom for decades because their citizens were savers. The savings rate in Asia was as high as 40% of disposable income. 40% of disposable income. So it set the stage for long-term growth. So we in Jamaica, we have to realize that a part of all I earn is mine to keep.
Lee Chin said the minimum that should be saved is 10% of one's take-home salary. However, the EGC chairman said saving is just the first step Jamaicans should be employing as the economy begins to take off. He says nationals must also look at investing in stocks and in businesses. Using Harlem in the United States as an example, Lee Chin emphasized the importance of Jamaicans having an asset.
The Abyssinian Baptist Church has been at the center of the gentrification of Harlem, period. But now that Harlem is gentrified, we have the wider, because of its excellent location, we have the wider community moving into Harlem. And the poor Harlemites who were not owners of assets were displaced, are being displaced. They're renters of assets. So over the last 10 years, he continued, we have seen a tenfold increase in the price of real estate, and the locals did not participate by and large. When I heard that, I got scared because I said, we in Jamaica are working diligently to gentrify Jamaica. And I came back and I said, when I go back home, every time I speak, I'm going to tell this story. Because if we don't learn from this story, because of Jamaica's excellent location, no different from Harlem to Manhattan,
He noted that the country was experiencing unprecedented high levels of business and consumer confidence, but lamented that it was mostly foreign investors who have been making use of the opportunities the improving economic conditions have provided. Members of the Senate on Friday paid tribute to young Acacia Green, the young mother who returned a large sum of cash she found in an automated teller machine in downtown Kingston recently. Leader of Government Business Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith and Leader of Opposition Business Senator Donna Scott Muttley presented Ms. Green and her mother Yvonne Jones with gift baskets courtesy of Grace Kennedy. At the start of the session, the senators rose to show their approval of Ms. Green's actions. With this latest gesture, the Senate has joined in the outpouring of commendations and other kind of gestures from corporate Jamaica and other individuals to the 24-year-old mother of two. In her remarks, Senator Johnson-Smith praised Ms. Green for doing the right thing when she thought no one was looking.
Ms. Green, Acacia, I want to not only commend and congratulate you on the positive choice that you made the other day. They say the best indicator, the best way to tell somebody's true heart is what they do when they think nobody is looking. You thought nobody was looking, but you did what was right. You saw something that could have been an easy path to richness. And we know a lot of young people today and over years, always looking for how to get rich quick. And it's never usually the right way. But you made a good choice. And what you have done, without even realizing it, is stimulated a new conversation across Jamaica about the importance of honesty. It is one of the most simple and fundamental values to encourage in any human being. And you now embody for a whole lot of Jamaicans who have been looking at the pictures on social media, reading about you in the newspaper, and thinking, wow, this woman is a good woman, because that was a tough choice, and she made the right choice. So we want to thank you for the inspiration that you are for a lot of young people who look for direction in their lives. We want to congratulate you on your registration for a new course of training, and we want to wish you well with it, because we know that money can come and go, but an education that is always yours, and it's always your ability to grow.
Senator Johnson-Smith noted that without realizing it, Ms. Green has stimulated conversation across Jamaica about the importance of honesty. For her part, Senator Scott Muttley said the story of Ms. Green touched our hearts.
The story of Ms. Green touched our hearts. And I remember reading a quote from C.S. Lewis, who says that integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching. What I find fascinating about this story is that she was desperately in need. She had house that just burnt down 2 weeks before, I think. She had lost everything. She had to borrow $200 from her mother that morning. And that temptation in those circumstances to have a bag of money in front of you, it must have been, it ought to have been that there was a conflict. That you would have said, boy, let's weigh this and see. This could fix my life. And I think that that is why her story is so compelling to all of us, because those circumstances which she confronted, her adversity was upon her, and she did the right thing. How many people can do the right thing under difficult circumstances?
She said that despite Ms. Green's circumstances, she did the right thing. The senator said she was also sorry that such a big deal was being made out of what Ms. Green did, as it should be the norm. In regional news, Barbados, Bermuda and Aruba were removed from the European Union's blacklist of tax havens on Friday. They were among several countries placed on the list in March for failing to change their tax rules, with the EU deemed were at the risk of facilitating tax evasion in their countries. Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley welcomed the news.
Insurance companies that could have left us will not now do so, because they will not be prohibited from doing business in Europe as a result of the blacklist. So this has tangible meanings for us as we go forward. It doesn't mean that the battle is over, because we live in a world, quite frankly, that persons will want to continue to extract every competitive advantage that they can. And competitive advantage also comes from the perspective of the imposition of rules and bureaucracy that will act as a non-tariff barrier in real terms to keep some countries uncompetitive.
CARICOM has repeatedly condemned the EU's blacklisting of Caribbean countries and has called for a more collaborative approach. Barbados has passed its first review under its standby arrangement with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. The country now stands to receive a further $49 million, bringing the total amount borrowed under the agreement to $98 million. The announcement came on Friday at a press conference with Prime Minister Mia Mottley and IMF Deputy Mission Chief Bert von Selm.
Continues to make strong progress in implementing its ambitious and comprehensive economic reform program. International reserves, which had reached a low of $220 million, 5 or 6 weeks of import coverage at end May 2018, have more than doubled since then. And the completion of the domestic part of the debt restructuring has been very helpful in reducing economic uncertainty, and the new terms agreed with creditors have put debt on a clear downward trajectory. All programs for end March under the EFF have been met, some with wide margins, the program target for net international reserves, for example, and also the target for central bank and net domestic assets. The target for the primary surplus, central government grants to state-owned enterprises, central government domestic arrears, and social spending were all also met.
Prime Minister Mottley said the IMF review showed that the country was heading in the right direction.
Really, the passing of the right road signs on the journey to success and transformation. And we have a few more road signs to pass, but as long as the people of Barbados stay the course, I assure you that we shall be successful in being able to overcome what really was a very turbulent and difficult legacy after a lost decade. But equally, we shall not only overcome if we do and agree on the mission that in all that we do, that we shall be the best that we can be, from the economic to the productive sectors, from the household to the church, to the community groups, to our enterprises, to being able to be prepared to take on risk, because at the end of the day, nothing ventured, nothing gained. If we can do those other things, we shall not only regain the lost ground, but we shall transform this country to continue on its path of punching above its weight.
St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris has denied holding discussions with Greek billionaire Alvides Alki David or his associates, who left the island earlier last week following his release of EC $300,000 bail after making an appearance in court on drug-related charges. Prime Minister Harris spoke on a radio program on Thursday night.
I want to make it absolutely clear that certainly neither Mr. David nor Mr. Edwards or Mr. Charles, whatever name he carries, are friends, investors, partners, or have any relationship with myself. And I have never organized or in fact engaged in any meeting with either parties. I knew of Mr. David after the matter broke in the news. I had reason to be at the Park Hyatt. I was accosted by a gentleman who in the end identified himself as Mr. David, and we had an interaction for about a minute and a half, because once I realized who he was, I then got a preview of the kind of character, unstable and unbalanced he was. He said to me, "Your government arrested me illegally." And I looked at him, in disbelief. One, I didn't know who he was until he made the approach. And secondly, that he would come to the head of a country in that particular matter. And I said to him, if you come to a country and you don't know the laws, you should consult with your lawyer or the government. And before I could have finished that, the guests on whom I was awaiting to have had a lunch arrived, and Mr. David walked away.
In sports, Jamaica's Reggae Girls gave their local fans much to cheer for in a solid 3-1 win over Panama in their final home game ahead of FIFA's Women's World Cup debut in France next month. The Jamaicans, who of course famously defeated Panama to book their place at the FIFA World Cup in the CONCACAF Women's Championship third-place playoff late last year, will now face Scotland on May 27 in a warm-up match in Scotland before getting their World Cup campaign started on June 9 against Brazil. They will also play Australia and Italy in their other Group C commitments. And that's the news on PBCJ. Thanks so much for watching.